right. There we go. Okay, so so we are really excited to work with you guys on this project. You know, the way that that we work is our first belief is that the people who live in a place know the most things about that place. And our job is to help with some of the larger planning questions and data and how to think about the data. But the solutions really are going to be, you know, you guys' choices, what the things that make the most difference to you and to your community. And so while we will propose various things, it will always be the committee's choice as to how to rank those things and how to order them and what things are important. So that's sort of our philosophy of how we work with people. And, you know, I think it takes so many different kinds of knowledge to get any good plan done that I have a lot of respect for all the different ways people have of knowing things and really understanding a place and the way that that place will be affected by any particular change, whether it's climate change or, you know, a large development or whatever it is, that, you know, the way that it changes has to do with the way that you view it and the way you feel about it. And so we will definitely be doing a lot of listening. And then we will be doing some talking when it is appropriate for us to be the ones, you know, talking about a particular solution or particular data or what that data means or something like that. So that's really how we think about it. My background is in planning and GIS, which I've been doing here for the last 30 years. And I do a lot of public participation. I really enjoy it. I really like that work. And I teach public participation GIS all over the country through an organization of GIS professionals. So it's definitely something that working with people to solve complex problems is something I really enjoy. And I'll let Madeline introduce herself.
So I don't have quite as an impressive intro for myself as Judy does, but
she will.
I'm working on it. I'm a bit newer to GIS and geography, but I have been working in Maine for the past couple of years, mostly with the shellfish community, and so also dealing with reaching the public in a lot of different ways, and I really enjoy public outreach as well. And communicating complex ideas using data and maps and interesting visualizations. And so I'm really excited to work on this project and get some experience with climate action planning and help you all communicate that to ACRC and make the best decisions for your community. So with that, are we doing introductions with the whole group, or?
Yeah, it would be great if everybody introduced themselves so that we get to know you.
Okay, Barbara, why don't you go ahead first?
You're on mute, Barbara.
Got it. I'm Barbara Footer. I am not a permanent resident of ACRC. I have my sister and I have a house there, we live in 6 months a year. I've been coming up to ACRC since I was a little girl because my grandparents owned a place on Old Stage Road. Now my uncle and my mother divided up the land and we inherited my mother's land, but we all share the land together. We also own and run the Doubling Point Lighthouse. But I've been coming up to Maine my entire life. ACRC. I went to Bowdoin. I now live in Nashville and I work for a lobbyist and I'm a semi-retired lawyer. And the committee that I agreed to do some work on is to participate in some webinars and to look for funding for the infrastructure and some of the regional planning grants. Great. This is really a treat for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Karen, you're up next.
Yep, Karen Sattler. Have been living in ACRC since 2017. And I'm on a couple of town committees and I'm really interested in climate change and helping to mitigate those changes and very interested in reducing carbon emissions as an individual and hopefully for the community. And I signed up for helping with the Rousing Arrow and communication and organizing community workshops.
Great.
Great, thanks, Karen. Jack, would you like to say a few words?
Well, I've been a Rouseck resident for about 6 years now. I've been in Maine for over 40. I've always had an interest in this sort of thing. I'm a licensed civil engineer in several states. I've been participating in down in Portland with a number of charrettes for various architectural and community of firms down there for looking at the water problem they're having on Commercial Street in the future and now even. So I've been involved in some public work and putting that kind of data together to find out the feelings of the community. I'm on the property committee as well as I'm the road commissioner for Doubling Point Road. So that's me.
Great.
Great, thanks so much, Jack. Mona?
Me. I'm Mona Schlein. I have lived in Rouseck for about 35 years. I am an educator. I've taught in elementary school and graduate school. Most recently, I've been in administration here. I'm on the Shellfish Committee here in Rouseck, and I am eager to participate in this committee. And I didn't sign up for anything, but my interest would be in education, regional projects, and community workshops. I'd be glad to help out.
Great, Mona, thanks for joining us. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Cassidy. Moved to Whitmore's Landing in Rouseck in October. So I'm the newbie. Relocated here from Barrington, New Hampshire. I was on the Barrington Conservation Commission and have had a long history of interest in both sustainability and our carbon footprint. So I am, like everyone else, looking forward to getting to know my neighbors, but also working with the town of Rouseck on planning for the future, especially after seeing some of the recent flooding. I've gotten a quick lesson in coastal road flooding issues. So anyway, that's just short version. Thanks.
Great.
Dan, did you get any pictures of that storm out by your house?
Did you ask me that question?
I did. Did you get any?
I did not get.
photographs?
I did not get any pictures.
Just
Sorry.
curious. That's okay. Tom,
Yeah.
you're next.
Yeah, Tom Spear, live on Sir Royce Road, have bought the house about 10 years ago and moved here permanently about 5. I also work with Karen on producing the Arrow. And in conjunction with that, I'd be interested in writing reports, grantsmanship, etc. The background is an academic.
Great.
Wonderful. Jennifer, nice to see you. You're
Hi.
next.
I'm Jennifer Geiger. I've been a Rouseck resident for about 30 years and on the Rouseck Planning Board for about 10 years. I'm currently the chair. I'm also work for the state Department of Economic and Community Development. I'm part of the Office of Tourism and I do communications. I have to call back somebody from my office who was just trying to ask me something. So I'm going to mute myself, but I'm not leaving.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Alicia.
Hi, I am co-chairing this committee with Jody, and my husband and I bought a house on Whitmore's Landing Road in Rouseck about 6 years ago, and we are trying to move there permanently. Not yet. It's a campaign we have going, but when we're not there, we're in Maryland, and I'm really excited to do this work. I do this kind of thing internationally, and I'm super excited to work with my Rouseck community on these issues.
Great. And I'm Jody Jones. I co-chair this with Alicia. I retired 3 or so years ago from Midcoast Conservancy as the executive director there. And I waited a while before I volunteered for anything. And I'm very excited to see all your faces and to be working with such a talented group of people. That's all I have.
Yes, I have to say, it's you guys sound like an amazing committee, and well, I'll have to admit to being a little intimidated, but I'm sure we'll all get over that. All right.
Oh, good. We have Margaret joining us, who I haven't actually met yet. So,
Hi there. Sorry I'm late.
Margaret.
No, you're perfectly timed.
Well, you're very
Perfect. We were
kind
just
to
doing
say that.
introductions, so it's your turn.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Was there any direction for the introductions or just introduce?
Just go for it.
Okay.
Margaret, tell us a little bit about why you're on this committee and what you plan to do.
So my name is Margaret Coughlin. We moved to Aroustic just 2 years ago. So we're newbies. And we also have a house in Boston. So I feel like climate change and all of that is incredibly important everywhere. I'm working on a couple of projects in Boston as a community volunteer where we're trying to make our waterfront more resilient because while my house won't be underwater, a lot of other people's houses will. And when we bought our house in Aroustic, we made sure to buy it high and on ledge because we'd actually owned a house in southern Maine for 15 years and the ocean had rolled through it twice. So the other thing so that's one part of it. The other part I think that's just become, since I retired a couple of years ago, I've also been blessed with grandchildren and I'm becoming more and more concerned about the world that we're leaving them in so many ways. And this is just one way that I hope I can make a tiny dent before I leave this world. Plus, I'd also like, the third reason is I'd like to get to know some more people in my hood.
Yeah.
So great to see you, all of you. So take it away, Judy.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. And so you all received, I think, the agenda. I changed it a little bit. So just so you know, in case you looked at it carefully, I did make a few changes. So our goals for this evening's meeting is to go through a decision-making protocol, of which I have an example, but is by no means anything that you have to do, just ideas for you to try out. And then once we get through that and we agree to it, then we will work on a mission vision statement. And Madeline's going to lead you through that exercise. And then we'll go through the timeline of sort of a very rough timeline of the whole project. And then we can get more specific as we move forward. But for tonight, I think that's probably enough things to bite off. So that's the goals for the meeting this evening. And then let me open up. All right, so Jody sent me some ground rules that all of you discussed last time, I believe, last time you met. So I started out with those. And if there's ones that anybody wants to add to that, we can certainly do that. And then we talked about making a plan so that we make a plan ahead of time. That way, if there does happen to get to be any kind of conflict, we have made the decisions about how to handle it ahead of time. So hopefully this covers everything. It's probably more specific than it needs to be because I suspect that you all will do a great job of working things out and coming to consensus whenever possible, as it starts out with. But in case we can't, we want to know what we're going to do. So what I have so far is that the committee will work towards consensus whenever possible. Meetings will be advertised at least 1 week in advance on the town calendar, and committee meetings are open to the public. That's just like the basics of they're town meetings, so they have to be available to the public. And you have to at least let people know they're gonna happen. And then in terms of voting, so ahead of time, I think we can, or at least you can decide if this is what you want to do, but you will for sure want to vote on the mission statement so that you have a written record of that, and on the final report. So the beginning and the end, we're going to want to have actual votes. It may be that it is not necessary to have any other votes than those two, but if you want to add or remove a member of the committee, that should probably be by vote. And if there's a decision, what I used as just a starting place was, if the committee cannot come to consensus after at least 2 meetings where the issue is discussed, then you could call a vote for that. But you'd have to at least make it through 2 meetings of having a discussion. That way, if a discussion comes up and it doesn't end up in consensus, and you publish another meeting, you can let people know that that's what you're going to be discussing, so that everybody knows if they are concerned about that particular issue, they should be at the meeting. And then in terms of voting, consensus agreements can be passed with consensus of committee members present at any official meeting of the committee. And then votes in the affirmative. So if you have to have a vote, they should be a 2/3 vote of the total number of committee members. And if I knew the total number of committee members, I would have put the actual number in there, but I didn't. So I just wrote that. And then just allowing you in your whatever set of rules we're making up here, that if you want to vote by email, it will require a 2/3 vote. And then the way you'll do that will be an email sent to all committee members with the proposal clearly stated and the words email vote in the subject line, so it's clear to everybody what it is. And then the chairs will count the votes that are received within 48 hours, because the only reason you would be voting in between meetings is because there's a rush and you have to do it. So you want to give a time limit for how long you have to respond to that. I'm going to stop there. I'll move on to subcommittees in a minute, but do people have any comments, concerns, suggestions? I am not wed to any of these things. I just thought it would be easier to start from a place than to start from let's make it up whole cloth while we're meeting.
So Judy, I want to thank you for doing this. This is really wonderful and nice and specific. And I like guardrails, so I appreciate that. My one question is, do we have a number of people do we have a committee maximum, or is it not a maximum number? As many people as possible, as long as they're voters in the town? How does that work?
I can answer that. Right now we have 13 members, and I was at the Conservation Commission, and all of you were voted in as official members. We are an ad hoc committee of the Conservation Commission, and if there are other members who would like to join, you should get in touch with Alicia and myself and let us know, and we can pass that. We can work it out if there are additional members who would like to join. Right now, there's 13 of us.
Terrific. Thank you.
So Jody, should we take out the part I put in about adding new members, or do you think that, as you go on through the process, that the committee would still want to vote to add a new member, but that would still just be a recommendation to the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, I think it's the Aroustic Conservation Commission would be the ones that I think we would say we would make a recommendation to the Aroustic Conservation Commission.
Okay. Well, let me make that modification here. To recommend. There we go. You all see how bad a job I do at typing. All right, any other questions or comments or concerns about the methods?
Jennifer, did you have something?
My question was about appointments, so I'm answered.
Great.
I'll just
Does
say
this-
this is really helpful, Judy. I think, well done. I like what you put down there.
Okay, I'll move on to just on the next page. I think I have just a little bit about subcommittees. So the committee can create informal subcommittees. Yeah, any of this can be changed if if you've already made other choices, but I said that subcommittees are designed to get a specific task done and they'll only meet while that task is going on. Subcommittees will bring recommendations to the full committee and cannot make any decisions for the committee, only develop recommendations. I did say that like twice. I realized that in one sentence, but I've worked with quite a few committees and subcommittees in which it was always a good idea to repeat that particular sentence. So you don't get divergent committees making different choices and claiming that they are the choice of the committee. And then I said that, so this becomes an issue for towns. It may or may not be an issue for Aroustic, but I've worked with a few communities where there's a discussion about whether the subcommittee meetings have to be advertised and public and held in public. So all I said to cover that is that minutes of their meetings will be added to the full committee meeting minutes for public record. So if a subcommittee meets, somebody should write up like a paragraph about what they talked about, and we can add it to the minutes of regular meetings so that there's some public acknowledgement of what happened.
Well, let me just say a couple words about that. I don't want, subcommittees worrying too much about the nuts and bolts of minutes and whatnot, as long as they bring something back to the committee and it's in our full committee minutes when we discuss it. That's fine for me, because does that work for, is that captured that way, Judy, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be more than like a paragraph, like our committee met and our recommendation was blah, and then, and if they're meeting more than one time to come up with a recommendation, maybe just a paragraph that says, we're working on this. We met, these people met, these 3 people met, had a good discussion. That's it. Like, we don't need to know about what the whole discussion was. We don't need to have any record. It doesn't have to be like, somebody's typing while people are talking. just a record so that people can, if people want to look back, they can see what happened and who was part of that discussion. I think that's the important thing, is who was part of the discussion.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Who's part of the
I mean, in the
discussion?
beginning,
Go ahead.
we're not really having committee meetings. We're actually maybe getting to know each other. It seems to me that it would be more useful to have minutes when you're actually discussing something to bring to the fuller meeting. Because there's going to be, who knows whether we have a committee meeting when we have just 2 people talking on the phone or talking about something, but does that make any sense?
Yeah, I agree with Barbara too. I wonder if this can just bog people down, and as long as there's a report out, when we have committee meetings and we capture that in the notes, I think that'll free people up a little bit more.
I totally agree. I think we might actually, I don't think people have to take notes when they're talking on the phone, and really each of our committees is a couple people at this point, and 2 or 3 people, and they'll be bringing it to their ideas to the full committee where there will be minutes captured. So I don't want to bog our amazing volunteers down with too much administrative duty.
So Judy, can we cut that sentence to start with each subcommittee will only report back?
Right.
Yeah, I'm just trying to repeat lawyer speak that I have been given in other subcommittee contexts. So if you guys don't, if this works for you guys, it works for me. It makes no difference to me at all. However you guys decide to run things.
I would like to have where it says each subcommittee will report back the recommendations to the fuller committee. Or each fuller committee or something, which, essentially they don't they don't need to write up notes, but each meeting they'll report, oh yeah, we're working on this, or we have not met or something. So they'll
Okay.
be in the every time we meet.
Okay, yep,
I also think that would be good practice so that the chairs aren't trying to chase us down.
Yeah.
The obligation it's a two-way obligation. And I think that, again, we're just asking for simple bullet points or a paragraph as I understand it. And that's
Why
not.
don't we say we'll report our progress? Each committee, each other will report their progress at the full committee meeting.
I like that.
how's
a lot.
that?
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep. All right, and then finally, the committee discussions follow the norms of meetings agreed upon as seen at the beginning of this document. Non-members may be allowed to address the committee at the pleasure of the chairs. Non-members may not vote or be part of voting discussions. I put that in there because I have definitely been a part of committees where, you know, the committee is working pretty well. They invite somebody else to come and talk, and because that person has important information, which I think is all good, and you want to have that. And if the public comes and somebody wants to say something at your meeting, you certainly want them to be able to do that. But when it comes time to making a decision, that discussion should be amongst committee members and not just randomly anybody who happens to have showed up gets to participate because you have been approved by the Conservation Commission and you are the ones who make that decision. And I have seen where a non-committee member kind of controls the discussion, even though they can't vote because the committee didn't stop them from being part of that discussion. Again, if you don't want that in there, we don't have to put that in there, but that's why I put it in there. And then I put all members should be allowed to participate before any member speaks again. That's just to help. That could probably go up in the norms, right? Like that's just how to go around and make sure everybody has a chance to say something before, you know, somebody says something a second time.
Judy, I'm sorry. Is there somewhere either up top in the notes or down here that says that the chairs are basically in charge of the meeting so they can, this is not the nice way to put it, but they can cut off discussion or they can, you know, if someone's hogging the floor, so to speak.
Yeah. It does not right now.
I think given, in my experience, that is an important protocol to be sure is clear, that the committee chairs are in charge of that and can, I'm not saying it nicely, but they control and moderate and can stop discussion and call on people to participate, blah, blah, blah. So pontificators beware. Don't put that part in.
How about the chairs can moderate discussion when necessary?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Barbara, you're on mute still.
And we'll call on and can call time and call for a vote.
Yeah, those are great modifications. Thank you.
All right. Now my next question would be, do you want to approve these this evening, or do you want me to send out these modifications to all of you to review, and then at the next meeting you can approve them? That's up to you guys.
I feel pretty comfortable with these. We can always change them at a future meeting if we find that we'd like to. So I'm ready to call for a vote. If people are.
I will formally second that, Jody.
Okay, Mark, thank you.
Does anybody have any other comments or questions or things they would like to see changed, or something you want me to scroll to so you can see it?
Are we doing Robert's rules? Does somebody have to make a motion that we approve?
We are not. I specifically did not include Robert's rules in any of these rules, so I think you're okay.
Jennifer, you're good at this, but I think we can. Let's call for a vote. All those in favor of this draft as proposed, raise your hand. Any opposed?
Looks like consensus to me.
Yes. Great. thank you.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, let me save that before I lose my changes. And I will still send that to Jody to send out to the whole committee, so you all have a copy of it. So next in our agenda is the mission and vision statement. So I'm going to turn things over to Madeline. I'm going to stop sharing. Do you want to share your screen, Madeline, or not?
I don't think that I need
Okay.
to, just so we can have a good discussion and see each other's faces. Let's see. So for developing like a mission statement for the committee, yeah, I'm sure everybody knows what a mission statement is and its general purpose, but just as like a quick refresher, a mission statement, it describes what a group is going to do and why, and is generally pretty action oriented and usually just a sentence. And so a good mission statement is usually concise and gets everything across in a short little bit of text. You stay out of the weeds and generally just talk about on a very high level, like what you want to achieve as a group. And you use language that everybody can understand and stay away from like jargon. And usually a good mission statement is outcome oriented and inspires people towards action and what things that you want to achieve as a group. And it's inclusive. And so it is usually very broad and it includes the whole community, and it does not get down into the weeds and get super specific and exclude different strategies or methods you may have to use later on. So in general, just something very short and that captures the essence of what you're trying to accomplish as a group. And it can help focus your group as you work through all of these issues and go through all of the day-to-day things that you have to accomplish to get this plan created. It can, be a beacon of light for the group to focus on. It's also very good to have handy if you have to reach out to other community groups or community members to explain what you're doing in a very concise way. And it just generally gives your group a sense of purpose and direction. So if there are conflicts, which I don't think there will be in this group, but if there are, it's good to have that mission to sort of bring everybody back together and keep you all focused towards your mission. So with that, I can share a few examples that I have pulled up, but does anybody have any questions or comments about why we're doing a mission statement for the group?
Just one thing, I will say that Karen did, get this ball rolling and had an example. I don't know if you want to share that, Karen, or you want to let the group work a little towards it, or what?
Well, I
That
think
would be wonderful.
I actually like the idea of going through the process. I mean, I'm happy to share it, and you saw it in the email. So whatever the group feels like, I don't want to narrow the thoughts, but I had thought about it, and so that's what I came up with. So let me know what you think.
What does the group think? Do we want to jump into discussion or take a look at Karen's?
Why don't we use Karen's as a starting point for discussion? I think that would be great.
Perfect. Okay.
All right, Jody, help me out if I don't get it quite right, but my idea was that we identify and communicate steps the town of Arousik can take to mitigate impacts of climate change and to reduce carbon emissions.
I'm probably gonna have to say that a few more times before I get it all typed. So I got to identify and communicate. That's as far as I got.
Right. So my thinking was we don't make decisions that affect the town. What we do is we bring ideas to the town. We're doing some of the work that helps the community of Arousik to decide at next year's 2024 town meeting whether they would like to adopt the action plan that we develop. And so for me, it was important that we identify steps the town can take, and communication and educational material is part of the grant application. And for me, it is steps. We prioritize, we offer help in prioritizing steps that the town can take. And for me, it's the two big topics: reducing carbon emissions and mitigating the impacts. For example, flooding of the road, severe weather events, things like that.
Karen, do you want to write it in the chat so that for people that want to, do you have it? Like you could copy paste it?
Yeah, that would be perfect for people who I'm visual.
Mona, looks like you have something.
So that statement Karen sent out, and I think it's very clear and very concise. And I think language like that makes it very accessible for other people to read and to be able to understand and internalize. And I like the wording of that.
It looks like Margaret, you had something to say?
Just one question that I had is that I think that the language said the town of Arousik, and I just wondered, do we want to say the town of Arousik and individual residents, action the town of Arousik and individual residents can take? Or do we really want to only focus on the town as an entity taking action?
I would like to add to what you're saying, Margaret, to say that I like the idea of producing a plan that has individual steps, town steps, even some private enterprise steps, but develop maybe more. I'd like to do it more broadly, which is to develop a climate resiliency plan for Arousik townspeople and residents. And I also feel like carbon emissions is great. I just think it's too narrow. I would just like to do more climate resiliency. I mean, it will include carbon emissions, but I also think it should include land, air, electricity. All those are involved in carbon emissions, but I think I'd like to have broader language than that.
I think this language is pretty broad because it specifies steps we could take to mitigate impacts from climate change. And that's about as broad as you can get. And I think that adding in and to reduce carbon emission is important, because a lot of conversations I hear about resiliency are about adapting, and I don't hear a lot of language about trying to slow stop contributing to it. It's more about, adapting to it. So the carbon emission is the specific man-made cause that we can have an effect on to try to offset those impacts, acceleration. So I think I actually think that it's pretty broad, and going into electricity, et cetera, is in my ears, it seems more in the weeds than what Karen presented to begin with. My question was, do we want to say something about supporting the Arousik Conservation Commission goals, since we're a subcommittee?
So maybe just listening to whatever all of you said, if it said to identify and communicate steps the town of Aroostook and its individual residents in support of the Conservation Commission can take to mitigate impacts of climate change, including but not limited to reducing carbon emissions. That incorporates what everybody said, but I don't know if that gets too broad, squishy, whatever. I don't know, Karen, what do you think? Does that, Karen, does that dilute what you were trying to say, or?
I've read about mission statements being as short and precise as possible. So
Yeah.
it's always a challenge. Yeah. Yes,
It's a
we could say
challenge.
a lot more. And I like the addition of the residents. I was hoping that the town of Aroostook would include the residents. I'm not thinking of the entity itself. I'm thinking of everybody in Aroostook who is as an individual or as part of a committee responsible for decisions. So I would like to make that more clear, and I think that's a great suggestion. Putting the Conservation Commission in there is tricky because they don't get to make all the decisions. They are just one committee, and this is a much broader challenge.
Yeah,
But
I'm with,
But I think we
Excuse
were created by that committee.
What's that?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted. You go ahead. Is Tom?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
yes, yeah, I'm with Karen on this one. I think we should keep it simple and clear and fairly broad. This does reflect, her original text does reflect exactly what we were set up to do. And I'd really like to get rid of all those clauses that just got in the way.
The modifiers.
I really like I actually really like what Karen has come up with. The piece that I want to maybe get Madeline's help with is sort of the inspiring part. And I think we may be able to do that with the suggestion of, I think people have to see themselves in this mission statement. So, you know, to identify and communicate steps, all of us in Aroostook, or, you know, because that would include the town, and, you know, some kind of language that people say, oh, I'm part of that mission statement. And maybe Madeline, you can help us with that.
Wordsmith it a little bit. Yeah, I think that making it a little bit more relatable to people, or like feeling more inclusive of people, could maybe make it more inspiring. You could also, mission statements can also sort of present like a vision for what you want to be. So if you could have a part of that statement that includes like what you want to become through taking these actions, that could add a little bit of inspiration. But you know, take that or leave it. I know it might make things more complicated, but I have seen a lot of mission statements where like people talk about creating a more sustainable and resilient community for all, or like creating this plan, like helping a community become that vision that they want to have. And so I know that we're doing a mission statement and not a vision statement, but we could have a vision, and then we could also have a mission statement. But it just depends on how into this you all want to get.
So having listened to all of those things, this is what I have typed out. And I can change it and I can show it to you. To identify and communicate steps the town of Aroostook and its residents can take to mitigate impacts from climate change and to reduce carbon emissions, thus creating a more resilient community. Does that seem like it's still short and sweet, but manages to get to the inspiring of where you want to go?
I like the adding of the residents to the vision statement. So
Important.
Karen?
Aaron?
I also like that a lot. And resilient and inclusive community.
And inclusive?
Sure.
How do people feel about that? Everybody good?
I'm not sure how that translates, but I'm sure that I'm not sure that I understand what you mean. So I'm not sure everyone else others would understand what you mean.
I think to Margaret's point or story before about Boston, you know, it's about all of us having a resilient community, not you know, not leaving the poor people in Boston who are getting flooded out, but it's a like all of us in it together, making sure no one's left out. That's how I interpret it.
I have one more suggestion.
Yep.
Beyond identifying and communicating steps, I think that something this committee might want to try to do is identify and communicate resources that can benefit the town of Aroustic in efforts to mitigate impacts from climate change and reduce carbon emission. I don't know. I'm wondering if there's a way to put language in there about not just things to do, but things to help you do it.
How about to identify and communicate actions and resources?
Yes, I like that.
Judy, can you read it to us again?
Yep. To identify and communicate actions and resources the town of Aroustic and its residents can take to mitigate impacts from climate change and to reduce carbon emissions, thus creating a more resilient and inclusive community. Karen, you had your hand up. Oh, sorry, Jody.
I have one suggestion, is to put that last thing at the beginning. We aim to create a more resilient community by, because that's the inspiring part to me.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes the flow of the sentence more clear too.
All right.
Karen, had her hand up for a bit.
If the inclusive comes across a little bit weird, then maybe resilient community for all is an alternative.
And I was going to throw out there, Madeline, what you thought about if we start getting too bogged down to, I mean, I've seen them where we have something really short. I love the inspiring part though. So it's short, inspiring, you know, it's up there. And then there's sort of that extra part of like, we do this through these, taking these actions. So it's not really part of the mission statement, but it's like an addendum that clarifies for us how we go about doing it. So everyone is clear and feels, you know, good about it as an approach.
One last comment in that, you know, my hope is that this committee will eventually become a standing committee of the town. So even though the grant will end and whatnot, there'll be some of you who might be writing more grants to get more resilient money in our town or in our region. And so I don't want to limit it. I want to be like visionary as well.
Mm-hmm. So you could, like Alicia was saying, separate out some of the more specific things, like identifying and communicating. And I don't know if that takes away the bite of the mission statement, or if separating them out below, like as like the ways that you achieve that vision, makes it a little bit easier to just like have a short and sweet vision statement at the beginning that you can quote. I don't know. Oh, there goes Judy with the full vision statement. to create a more resilient and inclusive community through identifying and communicating actions and resources the town of Arousek and its residents can take to mitigate impacts from climate change and to reduce carbon emissions.
I have a suggestion. I'm wondering if we could, I think this has been a very rich discussion. And I'm wondering if there's 2 or 3 people could work with Madeline a little bit on taking these ideas and making it a little more snappy, a little more inspirational, and bringing it back to the committee at the next meeting. It's just an idea.
What do people think about that? That work for everybody? Are there 2 or 3 people who want to volunteer?
Jennifer, maybe one other person?
Karen,
Karen,
excellent.
perfect.
Perfect.
That
Thank
seems
you.
right.
It does seem right.
Mission statement and the vision statement, which is more how we're going to do it.
Sure.
Yeah, you can divide it into the 2 and like, yep.
Yeah, and Madeline will be a good resource for you 2 to work with. That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be happy. I can reach out and we can chat, find a time to chat after this or something.
Thank you for volunteering, Karen and Jennifer and Madeline.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. All right, so our last thing of the evening, I am going to share my screen again. Just to go through the timeline. So we put this together, you all have it. So I'm just going to go down through it and then I'll unshare my screen again so that it's easier to talk to each other. But over the winter, like now, we're doing what we just did. And we will be starting to work on this part of it right away. So we'll be starting to gather the data and the resources and conduct the assessment. That'll be sort of our work. And there'll be a little bit of time for us to do that. And so then we can, then when we meet with the committee again, we will have information which we have provided to you before the meeting that you can review, and then we'll go over and provide feedback on that. We can make whatever changes need to be made. And then over the summer, we'll be drafting, the actual plan itself and come back to the committee with that draft. And the draft will probably include actions and resources and things like that, but probably not in any order, right? And then we'll work with you to make sure that the facts that we have tell the right story, because you know your story the best. And we will make sure, and then we will go through a process with the committee of, whatever strategies we've come up with. If we've missed any that you all have and know about, we'll add those in, and then we'll prioritize those as a group. And so we'll work on that over the summer. And then we will be able to present that draft if you guys want to, if that's the way we want to work, to other town committees. So we could plan a meeting where we invite other town committees to join us and go through the draft, and also see if there's feedback from those committees. Then thinking about the fall as a good time to organize a community workshop. And Madeline, I did have a question about this, which will be for you guys to answer, about if you want to try to do that over the summer. A lot of times communities that have lots of summer people want to do something over the summer. Although I will say that having planned those meetings, they have been marginally attended because, of course, it is summer and people are enjoying their time. But you guys know how that works in your own community. I know you've had some really successful public participation, at that time. So, but thinking about whether that's early fall or late summer or earlier in the summer, sometime that works to bring that to the whole community in terms of workshops. And we will make sure to create the ability to do little workshops with individual committees, so that we're not always asking people to come to us, but we go out to other people and tell them what we've done, and then holding that big community workshop sometime in the fall. And I think we talked about, and we can continue to discuss this. We don't have to decide it now, but that we'll make sure that there's a virtual part of that forum so that people who aren't there in person will also be able to participate in that community workshop. We'll incorporate all that feedback and then create a survey that also helps with that prioritization. You know, we all talk to you guys about it in case there's, you know, what we'll really be looking for the committee to do is to say, yeah, that's just not even worth putting on there. Or, oh, you forgot about this strategy that I've heard of, or can you investigate that strategy? And then we'll ask the community how to prioritize those. And then in the survey, and then when we get those results back, we'll create a summary of the survey and we will update the plan accordingly so that at the very latest, I suspect we can have it done sooner, but that by April, we would have the final plan that we've worked with you guys to finalize, and that would be then ready to be presented to the select board to have your official public hearings that the select board has to go through to put it on the town meeting for a vote in June, right? So that gives you we back that up from when that would be so that we would get that. So that's the kind of the very basic quick run through of this. Since you guys all have that document, unless somebody wants me to keep it up on the screen, I'll stop sharing so that we can talk about if there's any changes that need to be made to that, or any things that you think are missing or are misplaced or should be reorganized. Because we're not wed to any particular order of things happening. Only that I think the only thing that we are wed to is that by April, we have to have the final plan done so that you guys can get it to be voted on at town meeting. All right, so if nobody wants me to needs me to keep this on the screen, I will stop sharing. And we can, if there's any comments or discussions about that schedule, let me know. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not more well versed about grant, but we assume that this timeline matches the grant requirements. Support this.
Yep. I believe it does.
And the only thing I would add to that as a question is that our mission statement, it talks about actions, but it doesn't talk about the fact that we need to deliver a plan. And I don't know how you incorporate that into a mission statement, but I feel like that's a very specific deliverable. And if that's what the goal is, does that need to be reflected in the mission statement? That's a question.
We will make sure that when Madeline meets with Jennifer and Karen that they can discuss that.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I have only been in town for a couple of years, and my impression is that April gets really busy for the select board because they have to get the warrants ready and so forth. So I'm wondering whether our action plan final draft should be ready maybe in March, because then we would take it to the Conservation Commission, is my understanding. And from there, if we still have to have public hearings and the select board has to have time to read it and react to it, I think April might be too ambitious for their schedule.
Yep. I'm totally okay with March. I think if we do a survey and we send it out, you know, you don't want to leave it open for too long, because if you give people too long, then they don't answer it anyway. So like if we give people January to answer a survey, then we can finish it up in February and have it ready by the early March. I think that's reasonable. Okay, I will make that change.
Did you
And
have a
I-
question?
Yeah, I'd suggest pushing it even further earlier. You know, each time we refer something to a committee like the Conservation Committee or to the Selectmen, it normally takes several weeks to a month for that to be considered. It's just in the nature of the way the meetings work and advance notices and all that kind of thing. I would hate to see this rushed at the very end, that we have something. And remember, at the end, part of the job is going to be to sell it. That is to develop a consensus in the town meeting for it. So I would hope that we spend a bit more time on that.
I think that's great input, Tom. I think the buy-in that we're going to be creating with meeting with the committees in the town, including, you know, the emergency management folks and all that kind of stuff, and the and then the public workshop in the fall. I think which the Conservation Commission folks will be participating, I'm sure. I think some of the steps that we've put in place to do the outreach, which will include the select board, might mitigate some of your concerns. But I'm open to, I don't want to also, yeah, I want to make sure we have the time to do all that outreach in a very, you know, collective way. Because that will be how it passes at town meeting.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that, except that the town meeting is the town meeting. It is everybody going in as an individual. If you remember on broadband, we really did a pretty substantial job of trying to reach out to the town, including flyers and all kinds of things. So it is one thing to pass it through the committees and get all the details right. But it's another thing to get 100 people to raise their hand. And this is going to, I don't think raise much opposition, but I think there are going to be enough special interests that it will have some debate.
So do you have a suggestion for how to address that, Tom?
I just think open up the process a little bit. You know, we've said April, according to Karen. I'd go back to February or, you know, just a thought.
So, so looking at it, I mean, it's fine for me whenever we do want to organize things. If we want to do so we may want to swap around certain things if we're going to do that. Oh, and I only say that because if we move it back to February, you know, getting it ready by early February, so which I totally get, so it can be, you know, go through the process that it needs to go through. Then if we're going to do a survey and then use those survey results to come up with a draft, we'll need a couple weeks in January to incorporate the results. So you could, I mean, it probably won't, we will probably be able to make a pretty good guess as to what might happen and then to be able to make those changes fairly quickly. So, but you are talking then about having the survey running through the holidays, right?
Right.
So that's the part where you're going to bump into some issues. Now you could let it run longer and send out a few more notice, like email blasts saying, hey, remember that there's a survey out there. You know, and then really like do that like early December, let people have like the 2 weeks before they get completely caught up in holidays. And then in early January, send out another blast, like you have 1 more week to answer this survey, right? So you could do it that way. Or we could try to reorganize more than that. Alicia?
I keep raising and lowering my hand because I'm like, I think I have a question. I don't. I was just like, I was just trying to figure out, like, okay, there's a community workshop, there's a presentation, all this, and then there's the survey to get more community input. But I assume that it's because we've got a list of priorities or potential strategies and actions out of the community workshop, then we're going out with a survey to prioritize them. But I do have a question. So, but all of that sort of depends on some things like funding and like, where does the reality of all this kind of slide in? Like, we can't.
Well, I would say in working with this, like thinking about this type of plan, you want to identify what people have the highest priority for, because no matter what the funding source is, unless there's people behind it, it won't happen, right? Like, you have to pick the strategies that will work. They will also have to, we'll have to get that lovely, coincidence of political will, people behind it, and money that happens all at the same time, which is why we will have more than one strategy for everything. So that, if you start down one path and it seems like it's not going to work, or you don't get that grant, or, that there's another strategy to fall back on, and that we will have multiple strategies. When we have that public meeting, we will, I think that will be part of the meeting, is like, well, this is like, we won't have numbers for like what the cost will be, but we can certainly have, this is very expensive, this is medium expensive, and this is not so expensive, but takes a lot of volunteer time, right? Like, so we can put things in that way, and we can also have short-term, long-term, goals, so that in each category that we create, we have a set of potential policies and steps that we can take that are both long-term and short-term, that cost a lot, don't cost a lot, that take a lot of volunteer time, that don't take a lot of volunteer time, right? So that we get a mix for each one. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So we can rework this and we can talk about it again at the next meeting. That's totally fine. Karen, did you have another comment?
Just one more idea. The tax bills go out around Thanksgiving, and I'm wondering whether the survey would get more attention if it was part of the tax assessment, property tax assessment, or if it came in a separate envelope from the resilience committee that not everybody in town will have heard of. So if that is something you would consider, then that would shorten our timeline just a tad.
Yeah, if you could put in like a hot pink little postcard in with the tax bill that had a QR code and a link to the survey on it, and that went to everybody in town, and it, they obviously are going to look at their tax bill, right? So, and then there was something bright and cheery in their tax bill that said, hey, help us with this, that might be a great, if you can convince people to do that, that would be awesome. So we can go back and rework this and, try to fit in and be sensitive to like when people will attend public meetings, which you get like little sweet spots, right? Like you got like September, October, beginning of November, and you have like April, May in Maine, right? Like that's what you get. And so, but we can go through and rework this and we can talk about it again. Jody?
I have a question. How do people feel about the big workshop? Should it happen? I think we had our community workshop for the becoming a part of the partnership in August. 55 people attended. Just want to see, right now it's in the schedule for the fall. I just want to see what people think.
I like the idea of just kind of doing it in August like you did it last year, that it gets kind of something where people expect it, people plan on it. If you have 55 people, that seemed like a lot of people. And they came up with a great plan, great ideas. And I like that idea of doing it around the same time. I also really like, I know we're not starting with this, but I really like the idea of our mission being to develop a climate resiliency plan by identifying steps. But if that's what we're kind of asked to do from our committee, that is kind of the buzzwords that came out of what you had in August, and there were a lot of ideas from that. So I really like that this kind of leads through step by step nicely, so.
Okay. The other thing that we could think about is, do we want to move the survey to before the community forum and make the survey more open-ended to get more ideas from people in the survey, and then use the forum for prioritization, like, have people, do dot voting and have discussions about why you would want to make something, so you could flip those and do them the other way around, and then make the survey be much more, we could have some actual questions that were like click on answers, but then have a lot of open-ended questions for people to give us ideas and thoughts and suggestions. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It would really serve to help focus that discussion.
Okay.
Oh, we'll have to really be ready for that August meeting.
And the one thing is that the nice thing about doing the survey in the summer, like, so you don't want to do too much public engagement in the summertime, but people are often willing to do the survey part of it, right? Like, that's pretty easy, and there's always a rainy day. Well, hopefully there's a rainy day somewhere.
Well, there's also a way to tie it to the meeting. I mean, the meeting got very well publicized last year. And remember, people aren't going to start thinking about things until the last minute. That's just the way things happen.
Right.
So to link the survey as a preliminary mailing to the meeting, saying, we'd appreciate your thoughts because we're going to discuss this, et cetera, I think that would get some more buy-in.
And I also think that we might want to go and do some tabling, like at I don't know, where people pay their bills, or at the farmers markets, and do some of those things where it's like where people that are meeting people and talking to people.
Yeah, one of the things that I think worked well with the distribution is we had sort of neighborhood distributors for the flyers. And I mean, we could have neighborhood meetings. There's almost somebody on this committee from each neighborhood, so to speak. I don't know if we have a bald head person here, but we could find somebody to host it down at Bald Head and Old Stage Road, and the north end of the island, the south end of the island, or something. Those are options I think would be more productive than being in Bath or something like that. But that would be something each committee member would sort of take a neighborhood and host a meeting.
Yep. And we can definitely organize, materials for everybody to use. If you all decide, and we don't have to decide these things tonight, but, we have done meeting in a box before, right? So where we set it up so that we give you, a PowerPoint or, PDFs that you can print out. And then we give you like a report back so that you can write in like how many people were there and what they said and all the comments that they gave. And then we can also provide a place for people to add comments, as they think about things. So we can totally adjust those kinds of things, and we'll just fit things within, budgets and move them around, but we can totally adjust. And I think, it's probably good to think about what makes the most sense. So I would say my recommendation would be for you guys to look at this and comment on it and send us those comments. So like, if you want to take that PDF that we sent out and, write your own comments on it, and we'll gather all those up and we'll look at our schedules and we'll figure out like what we can work with, and we'll talk to Jody and Alicia. And by the next time we meet, we'll have a revised schedule, but if you guys in the next, say, week or two can send those comments, and you can either send them to me directly or send them to Jody, and she can, and Alicia, and they can forward them on to us if that works for everybody. We can do something else, but that would be my suggestion.
I would suggest you send them directly to Judy and copy the committee.
There you go.
I just really like Barbara's idea about the sort of neighborhood, getting people, smaller groups together. The two things that I think will make this pass vis-a-vis what Tom is concerned about are sort of making sure that our committee members are on board, and that if we've done these neighborhood meetings, and then we do the full workshop, I think that will be a really great trajectory for our work.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen, in at least two places that I've worked, where most recently Harpswell, when we had a public meeting on a beautiful day that we expected nobody to come to the meeting, and over 100 people came, and we were shocked. I mean, like literally completely shocked, totally unprepared for that many people. Like we thought 50 at the outside, and 100 people came. And I can tell you that all the advertising for that happened at the dump. People sat at the dump and handed out flyers to everybody as they came into the dump, which was spectacular. And I had a similar thing happen in a project I did in Damascata, where the committee divided up all the roads in town, and they literally went door to door and put like little notes on everybody's door, right, about when the meeting was going to be, and knocked on doors. If somebody was home, they talked to them. And because they only had like 30 miles of road, each committee member had like 5 miles that they covered. And it works. Like the direct inviting of people is 100% the thing that works best.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a dump.
Yeah.
We lived in Georgetown before, and the dump was the social event on Saturday morning. But here, I would just issue a little bit of caution. For the broadband, we had conceptualized having a series of 6 house groups, just dividing everybody into 6 house groups, and having somebody in each one invite their neighbors to talk about this and the like. It turned out to be impossible to pull off. We just couldn't do it with the folks that we had. Instead, we had a town-wide kind of information meeting before the town meeting, and we only got about a dozen people for that. So again, I think it's hard to know how much we can call on people to do, but I do think the notion of individual, door-to-door kind of solicitation. I mean, I can still remember you coming to our door, Jody. I mean, it was the first time I met you, and I thought, gee, these people are really organized. They're getting this going. So yeah, it's just, let's also think about how much energy we've got and how much we can do.
Yep, for sure. All right, so does that seem like a plan? If you have comments about the schedule and just the order that we do things in, and if there's little, modifications that you all think about, send them in, mark them off on the PDF, either comment right on the PDF or, write it on and then scan it, or just send me an email. Anything will work. And I think you have my email in one of the invitations, but it's just jcg@viewshed.net.
And I think you were just on the email for this meeting, so everybody should have it.
Yeah. All right. That was our last major goal for the evening, and we're running into 7 o'clock, so we're doing good on time. So let's, I think we know that we're going to come back to this, and we're going to come back to the mission statement at the next meeting. And probably at that meeting, we will have pulled some data together, so we'll be able to show you some maps. So that will be the fun part of the next meeting. when is that? Do you guys, is this when you usually meet? Or is there no usual meeting time?
We had 2 meetings, so there's
Okay.
no school yet.
Okay.
But how much time do you need, Judy? I mean, we'll be sending you things. So like in a, you think like the second week of, and now that I know I need to do my notifications, which I haven't been doing. You're thinking, I'm thinking Wednesday is a night when the town hall's empty and eventually we might meet there. I don't know, but
Yep.
how do people?
I would say a month. I mean, no sooner than a month, and we could do it in more than a month if that, if that's what works for everybody.
Okay, maybe the 3rd week of February.
So the 15th?
Is that school vacation week, and does that impact anybody? I always worry when we get into that time of February that it'll be school vacation and people will either be going somewhere or having people visit or whatever.
Okay for me.
My kids are out of school now, so I don't know when it is. So that would be the 15th
Vacation
of
week.
February. Yeah.
We could do February 15th. We could do the 22nd. Well, let me just make sure.
Either one of those works for me.
Yeah.
Have you checked it against the town calendar for other committees?
Wednesday is usually not much going on. I can check right now.
Okay.
Calendar up.
I kind of feel like the sooner rather than later, since we have so much to do, but
Okay, we could do the 20.
The 15th?
So we have, let's see, let me get to the right month. Yeah, Wednesdays are free at the town hall. We could do the 22nd or March 1st. Give the committees a chance to do some of their work. Or the 15th. What's the feeling of the group? Let's start with the 22nd. Raise your hand if that's a good date. Okay, Margaret's checking. I'm looking.
Good, sorry, it's good.
That's okay. I think let's just go for the 22nd of
Okey doke.
February.
Alrighty.
Well, I'm excited to see what you guys pull together and excited to, we'll have a mission statement draft to look at. We'll have data to look at. We'll have,
And do we want to meet from 5:30 to 7 again? Does that work?
I think it does. Actually, we have 2 members who aren't here who do have kids.
Oh,
So I think,
Well, we'll pencil it in, and then if we need to change it, we will.
okay.
How's
Good.
that?
That sounds good.
Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, this is a closing statement. I'd just like to say how much I appreciate with the thought and care that's gone into putting memos and agendas together. It certainly makes our work a whole lot more efficient and focused. So please keep up that good work. That's wonderful.
We will do so. we enjoy it. Jennifer?
I would vote to start later. I work till 5 or 5:30, and then I have to wait 7 to start dinner. It's a little late. So if we started at 6:30 till 8, but again, people with children might not do as well, but just allows those of us who are working to have a dinner hour.
You're on mute, Jody. Jody, you're on mute.
Maybe I'll do a doodle poll or something to just get a sense, Jennifer, of what the desire is of the group.
Yep, it's fine with us. So
Okay. Add that as an action statement, Madeline. Jody's gonna do a doodle poll.
And I just wanted
Will
to add,
do.
as committee, people get together, if you have any questions or need help or need another, voice or something, just reach out to Jody and I.
Yeah,
Any resources or something.
yeah, I'm looking forward to, Alicia, you sharing some of your vast knowledge. That'll be fun.
Wow.
all right.
Happy to help.
Anything else? Any other last comments?
I'd like to make one comment if I could.
Yeah.
We think of ourselves as an island, but we're not. We're a peninsula sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean. And if this committee were not the Arousal Committee, but the Georgetown Committee, somebody in the committee ought to raise the issue of what about Arousic's marsh down there when it floods out and the buses can't get in and the emergency vehicles can't get in and my fishing products and supplies can't get in, and all the other commercial issues that we don't think about so much in Arousik. Down in Georgetown, they're concerned about it, and we're not talking about them at all. So it seems to me, before we go too far on all this, there should be a parallel track going on of communicating with Georgetown, because you got Georgetown, you got the various municipalities that feed Georgetown, and you got Reed State Park, which of course is a state entity. And all of those could help contribute to whatever needs we need for resources and a push behind us to get things done if we need to raise the road or whatever else we need to do on 127. So let's not forget them.
That's a great point.
Thought.
Yeah, there's a reason that Portland and South Portland did their climate plan together.
Well, I've been involved in all those communities down there, and I know what happens when we don't think about the people around us. And they have good ideas.
Yeah, Kathy Gravino is, been working on this down in Georgetown, and maybe we should reach out to her. I know they're very, very much interested in the 127 issue, and working with MDOT to try to figure something out with that. I'm not exactly, the sort of main rural, home rule towns is very hard to, doesn't make it easy to collaborate. But let me just say, in the fall of this year, there's an opportunity to put together regional grants of more than one town for the partnership that we belong to. And that's still not a lot of money, but it's up to $150,000. So folks who are thinking about our next grant for the fall, looking towards the future for a regional grant, those folks, we on this committee should be talking to Georgetown and Woolwich and Bath or whatever about putting together a regional grant that might be a feasibility study for 127 or something like that. I don't know. But.
Yep. And there is also DOT money that DOT has a fair amount of regional community planning money right now that, towns can look at.
And they are currently seeking input.
Right.
From people. There's a, I could try to find the link to comment on their portal.
Yeah. So, and I think all those things are good.
It's a state road, it's not a private road. It shouldn't, I don't know that it's our responsibility to keep it open, but we might want to have a voice in how it's adapted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And, I think all those things are good. And I think there's nothing about home rule that would stop you from having someone from Georgetown come to a meeting and, have a discussion, or one of you go to one of their meetings, right? And have a discussion about how can we work together. you know, there's nothing will stop you from that. And I think even in the plan, you know, like even in a comp plan, you have to talk about how you're going to work with other towns. So I think there's nothing wrong with in a plan that we put together that some of the recommendations be, let's try to get a grant with, you know, the surrounding communities and work together to solve a problem that affects all of us. So I think all those things are good ideas and things we should definitely keep in the forefront of our discussions. All right, so we have passed 7 o'clock by a little bit. And but great job. Thank you, everybody, for really good comments and being very engaged. It's great when we put stuff together and then people comment on it. I really never want to put something together and have you all just say, okay, good. I'd much rather make changes and make it fit what you need. So thank you for all your comments. Oh, Barbara, you're on mute.
I just said thank you for what you guys did.
So we're happy to be here and we're happy to be working with all of you, and we'll look forward to the next meeting and all of the next steps after that. So have a great week and we'll talk, and you send us emails and we'll see you in a month. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.